Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 347 of How Do You Write? I'm Rachael Herron, and I am so thrilled that you are here with me today as I am talking to my pal, my friend, Grant Faulkner. He has been on the show before. He is a wonderful interview, and in this, we're going to talk about his new book, and we're going to talk about short fiction. And I literally just hung up with him, which is not something I normally do. Usually I'm a few months ahead in my podcast, but his book just came out today. So I want you to know about it. And I'm going to push this podcast ahead of all the others because it matters. And you're going to love it. You're going to love this episode. He has amazing things to say about revision and joy and how to live this life. So stick around for that. What has been going on around here? Oh, Lord have mercy. It's just painting. I painted a wall. I didn't paint the wall behind me. That's still covered with paint swatches. But I did paint a wall in my office. And the sooner I paint that office behind me, the sooner I can unpack. And the sooner I can unpack all of those boxes that belong in my office, the more I will relax. It's been 3 weeks. And I can't stand that I am not unpacked yet. But I did choose a wonderful, deep, kind of a reddish orange. And that's what I did this morning. And I felt very cool, skiving off of work a little bit just to paint that wall to make sure that the paint worked. And it did. And it's fun. What else has been going on? I talk about this in this episode. I've been reluctant to talk about it because I don't want to shoot myself in the foot and jinx myself. But I have taken on a new little challenge after talking to Eleanor Shearer, who's a podcast that will be coming up soon. And it was an awesome episode. She writes 500 words a day. And I thought to myself, I can write 500 words a day. I can write it in my sleep. I can write it so fast. And I decided to write 500 words a day. So that's what I'm doing right now, every day, including weekends. And I am not a weekend writer. This 500 words a day that I'm doing, that I talk about with Grant on this episode, can be from any project that I'm playing with. Always during my work time, I am working on a writing project. There's a large writing project on my desk and I'm working on it. I'm writing it or I'm revising it or I'm doing something with it. Always, always, always. That's on my desk. That will not change. And the time I spend on that will not change. So I'll still get more words written and lots of revision done. But I'm kind of feeding myself this fun and this joy of 500 fresh new words on something, anything every day. And I have been loving it. And it really makes me feel great that one of the very first things I do in the day is write these 500 words. And then the day can go to hell after that. And it will be okay because I did something new and creative and fun. And I feel like I'm playing and it's feeling really artistic and fun, even though right now I'm just using it to write the Patreon essay that'll be coming out later this month on the move into this house. So it's something I would write anyway. But I'm doing it in little bite-sized pieces. I'm having fun. The essay is going to be way too long. That is a little bit of a problem, because I can relax into writing 500 words a day. And suddenly I have 8,000 words that was only supposed to be 3,000 words. So that's something I'm going to have to manage. But it has been so fun. And I've set myself up a pacemaker program. Pacemaker is an app. I don't have an affiliate link. I should get it, but I very much like it for tracking words or pages, or you can even use it to track time in the chair. It is not that intuitive to use the first time you look at it. Just Google pacemaker writing app, or I think it's just available online. I don't even think it's an app. It's not very intuitive, but it works really well to readjust. So if you have a goal for this month or for the next 4 months, it'll readjust on the fly every time you update it. So if you write more, it'll give you less to write. If you write less, it'll up your expected words to write or time or whatever. Anyway, I set myself up with a little 500 word a day pacemaker plan, and it is so satisfying to fill it in. And I have missed one day because since I started this a few weeks ago, and that was totally cool. I meant to write and then I went out and had fun. I chose to go have fun instead for the whole day. And that was fun. That was cool. And then I have already made up for it. So I don't know. That's what's going on right now, work-wise. So what else is going on? I have a couple of new patrons. Thank you to Kylo Taylor. I wish for you the scent of new pencils to cover every bad scent you may walk past for the next month. And to Sandy Menard, thank you very much. I wish for you the deep, restful sleep of an exhausted puppy who is tired from having too much fun. Oh, and I also wish you all the fun that the puppy had too. So thank you to new patrons. Thank you to old patrons. Thank you to current patrons. Thank you to future patrons who might think about supporting me. It really does help me bring this podcast to you, which I love doing. And boy, I'm just kind of riding high on the fumes of talking to my friend Grant. Let me tell you a little bit about Grant, and then we'll get into the interview. Grant Faulkner is the executive director of National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, and the co-founder of 100 Word Story. He recently published, as in today, The Art of Brevity, Crafting the Very Short Story. He also published Fishers, a collection of 100 word stories, the short story collection, All the Comfort Sin Can Provide, and Nothing Short of, selected tales from 100 Word Story as the editor, and Pep Talks for Writers, 52 Insights and Actions to Boost Your Creative Mojo. His stories have appeared in dozens of literary magazines, including Tin House, Southwest Review, and the Gettysburg Review. And his essays on creativity have been published in the New York Times, Poets and Writers, Literary Hub, Writer's Digest, and The Writer. You can find him online, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and also listen to his podcast, Right Minded, and subscribe to his newsletter, Intimations, a Writer's Discourse. I have to admit, I don't subscribe to that, and I'm going to go subscribe to it right now, Grant. Please enjoy this interview with my friend. You will find him charming and wise and kind. And please enjoy your own writing, my friends, and then come find me online somewhere and tell me how it is going. Okay, we'll talk soon. Oh my gosh, I could not be more pleased to welcome you to this show. Could you please share your name and your pronouns with us?
My name is Grant Faulkner, and he, him, his.
Thank you. It's so good to see you. Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh
Good to
my
see you
gosh.
too.
So
This is fantastic.
we have been friends a very long time, and
Yeah.
I will know exactly how long it has been. And you've also been on the show a million years ago. And we're here to talk about your new book. But first of all, how long have we known each other? How long have you been the executive director for National Novel Writing Month?
Yeah. So I came in 2012. So I think it's like 10-ish plus
That's
years.
amazing.
And I don't know. I don't know when we did our last episode,
I have
but
no idea
now I
either.
want to go watch it.
I didn't even look it up. It was
I think it was
towards the beginning of the show because I was still like reaching out to friends and making them do it, you know?
I know I was in fifth grade.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. It was weird.
Yeah.
And now I think this will be like episode, I don't know what episode this will be, but probably like about 350 episodes
Oh, wow.
of this so far.
Cool.
So you are the executive director of National Novel Writing Month. And for the one person who's never heard of it, can you please give the log line for NaNoWriMo?
Logline, good one. Well, it is a very simple challenge to write 50,000 words in a month, the month of November. It's one part writing boot camp, and that's the showing up to write 50,000 words in a month. It's tough to do, but it's doable. But it's one part rollicking writing party, and that's because it's one big global community of everybody writing together, which is a galvanizing force in many ways.
Yes.
That's the log line.
That's a really, really good one. I did not participate this year for the first time in many years because we were in the middle of so many things and training for a long hike that we did and then moving and stuff. And I really missed it. I really missed the getting together with people and I actually know our local municipal liaison is a friend of mine.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, how was it? How was Nano for you this last year?
This year I did it, but I knew I was finishing the book, my book that just came out.
Please tell us the title.
Here it is. Today's the launch day.
Is it today? Congratulations.
Yeah, it's called The Art of Brevity. So it's a little bit different than the NaNoWriMo method, but yeah, no, I was doing so much work on that. I knew I wasn't going to have a chance to focus on writing 50,000 words. So I changed my area of emphasis and I focused on a writing streak. And so I wrote every day of the month. And I think that was just as motivating. I mean, I didn't write 50,000 words, but I ended writing, I think, about 30,000 words. Because my principle is if you just sit down to write, words will come. One sentence has a way of spawning another sentence. You almost always write more than you think you will if you allow yourself to. So yeah, it's always good to feel that energy, it is magical in the end, we don't know what's going to come out,
but it
happens.
Magical. It's funny. I just recommitted to a little mini challenge on my own that I haven't really talked about, but just writing every day, a very, very low number of words on top of whatever else I'm working on. But fresh words. I just want 500 words a day. Fresh words
Yeah.
on anything. It doesn't have to be the project that's currently on my desk. It can be on absolutely anything. And I've really found that joy again of just showing up. And it takes like, I don't know, 20 minutes on a good day
Yeah.
to get it done.
So that's a little bit like morning pages for you then? Is
Yeah. And
that right?
I also do morning pages. So I
Yeah.
do my
Oh,
morning pages
wow.
by hand, which is just like blah, and
Right.
then 500 words on a project.
Okay.
So
So it's a
so
project.
it's real writing, like and I really do consider morning pages not real writing. That is just blah. That,
Okay.
that so
So
that's a
here's,
little bit extra.
because NaNoWriMo is about math, and because writers tend not to do math, and I
I
think
love
that when
that.
you do the math of writing, it can be really motivating,
Yes.
and many other things. So 500 words a day, I'm going to say that math is 15,000 words a month. Am
Yes.
I right?
And
Yeah,
yeah, it sounds about right. All I know is that it's about 182,000 words a year.
exactly. I was going to go
Two
there too.
full length novels or memoirs or whatever it is, written in the back pocket of time. Just
Yeah,
like, this
back
isn't what
pocket of
I'm,
time.
it's not what's on my desk today to work on. It is
Yeah,
whatever I feel like. And I'm going to be collecting books together. I'm just really enjoying it. It's kind
I
of,
love
and it does feel nano freeing.
I love this back pocket of time concept, and you own it. You said it.
Thank you. I'll
But I think
forget that though. And I will attribute it to you forever. So please have it.
okay, okay. Well, I think it's a writing process that should be popularized, so you can write about it somehow.
I probably will. So let's talk
Yeah.
about you. Let's talk about you and this book and what this book means to you. Congratulations. I didn't know I was getting you on your actual release day. How
Thank
exciting
you.
is
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
So
Nothing's really happening.
which is really the
It's all
truth
on
of
social media.
which really the truth, right? But are you going to have any kind of launch party or?
I am. I'm having a
Okay,
launch party
good.
tomorrow, and then
Oh,
there's
good.
follow-up events and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
excellent. Okay, so the
yeah,
full title of it is The Art of Brevity,
yeah,
crafting the very short story. So
yeah,
you have been a fan of flash fiction, short fiction for a while. And
yeah.
can you tell us just about this book and how and what it's talking about, what you do in it?
It's funny because I've been asked a few times in different interviews, like, when did you start this? Why did you write it? And I didn't even think about this, but I realized I started it essentially back in 2010, 2011, when I
Mm,
started getting addicted to writing
mm.
initially 100-word stories. And the full story is that I was working on this big behemoth of a novel, which I call my doomed novel. It probably is really doomed. It's not, I don't know, it can be resuscitated. I think about it every once in a while.
Oh, I really love the
Um,
concept of it. I actually remember it. I don't remember much, but I remember you telling it to me. So yeah.
yeah. And so, somewhere in there, Paul Strome, who's the father of my good friend Jake Strome, he posted, or somebody posted, some of his stories that were 100 words. There were 9 of them that were published in this little literary magazine, and I happened to read them. And I thought it was and they were, so he'd written a memoir of 100 word stories.
Wow.
And I
Very
thought
cool.
they were so cool because they were these little snapshots. It was like he was like showing a Kodak carousel of his life. And the thing that appealed to me was how, well, he said, like, he conceived of them as like having writing within the compositional limits of like a fixed lens camera. You can't
Ah,
zoom in, you can't
uh-huh.
zoom out. You've just got to focus on that little square. And I thought and he said it, like, enhanced like his creativity, and so I just decided to do them, to take a break from the novel, which is like one good reason for flash fiction. You can take a break from longer projects.
Yes.
And then it just afforded a different style of storytelling. You could we have so many moments in our lives that I don't think fit in, and our characters' lives, that don't even fit
Mhm,
into the longer story that
mhm.
has this dramatic arc and all those things going on. But the small things can be just as significant. And so that's what it showed to me, is how just, and I took the form. I didn't use it to write memoir. I write fiction with the 100-word
Mhm.
stories. But then, lo and behold, that led into starting this literary journal, 100-word story, that's been going since 2011.
Oh my
And so,
gosh.
yeah, so while writing these and getting more and more into like this short form, I just started thinking about the aesthetic of the short form, and the many different like lenses it provides on life, and the different ways to craft a story. So yeah, I actually wrote this, though, to bring it back to NaNoWriMo. like I'd been jotting down notes and whatever for years, I guess, and wrote articles and stuff. But I did spend one camp NaNoWriMo, just like putting it all together. So it has a little bit of NaNoWriMo
Oh, that's
influence as
awesome.
well. Yeah,
And
yeah.
Camp NaNoWriMo is something that happens in April and August. Is that right?
April and July. Yep.
April and July,
And
which is,
it's a
yeah.
more casual version of NaNoWriMo and is open to all forums. So it kind of fit for me to write this then. So
And what is in this book?
so I'll just, it's all about well, I think the gist of it really for me is that art of writing like compressed stories. And in that fixed, so the definition of flash fiction is any world story under 1,000 words. And one thing I find interesting about flash fiction is how it's like Russian dolls nesting within one another. There's like shorter and shorter genres within those
Yeah.
1,000 words, like, so 400 words and less, that's considered microfiction. There are 6-word memoirs. There's a bunch of other ones too. And so I've forgotten your question now, but
What do you talk about within this book?
yeah, so I think a lot about it is that compression of the story, but also writing a story with what's not on the page. So with novels,
Oh,
and
yeah.
by the way, I haven't given up novel as an art
Of
form.
course you haven't.
I love
Yeah.
I love writing novels. I love reading novels. I love big messy novels. But like novels, you're really explaining a lot. You're putting a lot on the page. You're guiding the reader. And a lot of flash fiction is about what you omit and what you don't put on the page. And so you're kind of like, I always say, it's like writing like a really, really short piece. It's almost like you're playing the Ouija board. You're getting little hints from the other side. And
I love
part of the
that.
story is kind of like ghost-like, like it is kind of spectral in a way. And that's what fascinates it about me, is like how you can speak with words that aren't there, and how you can create, like your words have to be suggestive and provide hints and be evocative. And then you have to have more trust in the reader, right? Because the reader is filling in those gaps. So I find it an interesting reading experience as well.
But it's a really good training for writers too, because I feel like, especially when we are more used to writing in a novel format, we forget to trust the reader. We forget that they have a brain that we should rely on, because the reader wants to be included in putting together a story. The reader wants to have pieces missing that they then make the logical leaps to connect and make sense of and grow from. And when we don't allow them that, we're doing them a disservice and they don't enjoy it as much. So you're really kind of training yourself with these two. I have not prepared you for this at all, but I bet you have a 100-word short story somewhere in your desk, in your office. I can hit pause on this while you find it, and you could
Yeah,
read it to us. Or do you have one close by?
I do actually.
Yay.
I rarely have my books close by, but I did for this one.
Yay.
Just I don't know why, but
Because
I
I'm a
was going to
jerk and
say,
I'll just put you on the spot like that.
while I look for one, I'm going to ask. I'm going to say just what you said was really beautiful, and about trusting the reader and giving them hints. And so this actually does apply to longer work, like what writing with this higher sense of omission did. It helps me create suspense on the page.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so I think it can apply to really any genre of writing, because good storytelling relies on suspense. And one of the things I always love to refer to as suspense is Lee Child's essay in the New York Times drafts blog, which doesn't exist anymore, but you can still find it online. But he talks about creating suspense, and he's like, there's no recipe for suspense, but his metaphor is that you cook a big meal. You have people over to your house to eat. You cook a big meal, but you don't serve it for a long time. You let all the scents in the air, like you
Yes.
keep people hungry. You're giving them things, but you're keeping them hungry,
Right.
until
But
the
in the
big.
meantime, they can hear the timer ding, and the smells are getting stronger. That's beautiful. What a beautiful way to say it.
It is. So
Suspense is
everybody,
just one of those really, really difficult things for people to master, including myself. And I certainly don't have it
totally
mastered.
hard, and
So
especially in the novel, for the reasons you said, is because we tend to try to want to explain,
we worry we're
you,
not being clear enough. And that's always what, there's always two things that editors tell me. They're like, I don't know why you put that there. And I'm like, but I whispered it to you. You didn't catch it. Or they say, you've been explaining this for 17 pages. Can you please, dial it back about 16 pages?
exactly. And since you got your MFA and I got my MFA, and my horrible joke, is that the thing I heard most often in class is people would say, "I want to know more about this character. I want to know more about this scene." And I gave that criticism too. And I think it's
Of
really
course.
lazy criticism, because
Right.
actually the tough thing is not like giving people more. I mean, sometimes you need to put more, but oftentimes you need to put less. And so
Yes.
I think it's an interesting question to ask ourselves, like in revision, is
Yeah.
what needs to go? What should I cut?
Yeah.
How
And
can
when
I?
I teach quite a bit nowadays, and I edit my students' work, and they get one hot seat during the course of my classes, and I'll edit it, and I almost never say, I want to hear more.
Yeah,
Almost always what I'm saying is like, you already said this. You don't need this. Show me, show me something new. Yeah.
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 Since
It's just what we all do.
I'm going to riff on this one more bit, because like one of my best writing exercises from my MFA program, Bob Gluck challenged us to write a novel in one page. And the reason that was great is because he said, don't give me a this happened, then this happened, then this happened,
Right.
not a summary of the action, but capture the essence of the novel. And I thought it was really interesting to try to capture that narrative sweep and all the bigness of a novel,
Mm,
but in one page. And I think like that we could all learn from that.
that would be a great um, just exercise to do for any book that you finish. Try
Yeah.
to do it in a page or in 100 words, just as an exercise to get the feel, the tone, the movement. I'm not sure I could do it, but I'm definitely going to try.
I did it with this book, The Art of Brevity. At the very end of it, I did a 100-word version of it.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to buy the book and you see it in the bookstore, just go to the 100-word version. You can read it right there.
Pro tip.
Talking myself out of some sales.
That would give
Yeah,
you the sale in my book. I would read it and then I would need to buy it. Yes.
yeah. But the reason I did that was because one of the things I discussed in the book was Kawabata, who wrote one of my favorite novels called Snow Country, and he won the Nobel Prize for it. This was, I think, back in the 60s. But anyway, he wasn't satisfied with writing the novel, and so he wrote a 12-page version of the novel called Gleanings from Snow Country. And so again, he didn't summarize the novel, he just tried to capture the essence. So it's a really interesting exercise to do.
That's neat. Okay.
So I don't know if this is the essence of a novel, but it's a 100-word story.
Perfect.
It's called The Toad. It's about all of our romantic relationships. I bet all of us have had one
Excellent.
relationship like this. Okay. The toad, flattened by a car, its arms spread out, a little like Jesus. The sun had baked it as crisp as a potato chip. Poor Toad, Maria said, didn't know how to cross the road. Maybe he thought the car was a new friend, I said, rushing to greet him. Or he was puzzling how such a small thing in the distance could become so large, she said. We spent hours in such conversations. It was nice how we never talked about what was next, who we were together, as if the toad wasn't part of every story in its way, even ours.
That is lovely. And
Thank
that
you.
says everything about that relationship and about that is really, I mean, I guess part of the magic of 100-word stories is that subtext, the missing ghost-like part. And that's a story about the missing ghost-like part of that relationship. That's gorgeous. Thank you
That's
for
exactly
sharing
it, I
it.
think. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your response. And I think that is it. It is that subtext.
Yeah.
That's what you've omitted. And just to give like a little writing, like I keep giving writing lessons,
That's what we
but
want on the show.
okay. You know this quote, right, from Hemingway, where his famous iceberg principle quote, where an iceberg, only 10% of it is above the water, and so your duty as a writer, he thought, was you're just showing the 10% of the story, the upper 10%, and then the 90% of it's below the water.
Yeah.
And so, but you have to know that 90% as a writer in order for that subtext to speak through the rest of the text.
And I think that you
Yeah,
and I have talked about revision in the past. You are a big fan of revision, yes?
I love revision. I could live in revision.
I could live in
I could
revision.
stay there forever.
That's all I want to do. And maybe that's what and I have had this thought that with these 500 words a day, two
Yeah.
books worth, I'm just giving myself very easily something to revise later. That's what I'm clinging to. But in terms of that 90%, for me, a lot of times I don't even have to just know it. I have to write it in order to carve and chisel it away. So if you were to sit down, just out of curiosity, on average, and I know that everything is different, probably each story is different, but if you sit down to write a 100-word story,
Mhm.
what's the fastest you've ever written one and revised one that you were pleased with? And what's the slowest? Like, can you write one in 10 minutes and be done, like a poem? Sometimes a
Yeah,
poem, or can you spend
yeah,
weeks, months? What does it look like?
yeah. It's interesting because, like, I love NaNoWriMo because it makes novel writing accessible to the
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
and I love 100-word stories because they make writing accessible to the world,
Mm-hmm.
and because anyone can really write a 100-word story. And
Yeah.
so, but to write a good one is really, really tough, though. And so, since I run 100-word story magazine, we get a lot of stories where people have written one draft, and you can
Yeah.
tell,
Yeah.
and to write a really good publishable story, it takes me multiple revision. And the interesting thing about revising 100-word stories is it's kind of like a Rubik's cube, where
Mm.
if you twist it so that there's all red on one side, then the other sides are
They're
messed
all
up.
messed up. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like that with a 100-word story. You might have 93 words on your first draft, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to add 7, but you add 12, and then you have to subtract 5, but you subtract 8. But that's all good, because, like, what that's doing is you're paying attention to every word and the work that it's doing. And you're also, like any good revision, the story is kind of changing with every little turn of the screw.
Yeah.
And so I think of 100-word stories, and a lot of flash fiction, it's almost more about editing than drafting,
Yeah.
because you're just constantly fine tuning and tweaking. And so I think it's a great way to learn how to edit, because you're just paying
Yes.
such incredibly intense attention
And
to every element of the story.
such a fun, and so it sounds so fun, such a fun level of attention. I have different passes in revision. So I'll do the big revisions, draft 2 and 3 and sometimes 4. And then I'll do these little passes of just like, cause I hate writing settings. So I'll do a setting pass where I'll just write setting in, and I hate writing character description. So I'll do a whole pass where I spend 1 hour writing a description for every character. Now I'm done. But one of my passes, and this is kind of dumb, is I call it Twitterification, because I used to be addicted to Twitter. I am not anymore. But way back in the day when it was 140 characters, what I always did was I would go into the text box on Twitter and I would write out whatever I wanted to say. It's 3 paragraphs, whatever. And then I would just chop words away
Ah,
and add better words and chop and chop and chop until I had these stunning little, I thought they were stunning. They probably don't hold up, but sometimes I would have stunning little sentences on Twitter that said so much. They said 3 paragraphs worth in
yeah,
140 characters.
yeah.
And now what I do is I just call that pass on my novels Twitterification, because I know that I'm looking at every sentence saying, what can I whittle away to get more clear, to be more clear on
Hmm.
the page.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's
It's an amazing process to do that, because, like, so just to say that the story I read from this book, Fissures, which is my collection
I
of 100-word
have
stories.
that. I love that
Do
book.
you?
Yeah. But I will admit I'd forgotten Toad. I apologize.
No worries. And so they're each about a paragraph long,
Yeah. Yeah.
but what's interesting is, like, you can go through them with that kind of fine-tooth comb, and now every once in a while I'll read one and I'll be like, oops, there's a little bit of flab in there.
That's
Just a
so annoying, isn't
little.
it?
Get out the screw and kind of tighten it up.
That's amazing. I also have I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I have a traumatic tale about 100 words, and I will never, ever, ever
Yeah.
forget it. And it's a core piece of my writing story. So I was maybe, I'm going to say, we lived in El Sobrani. So I was probably 7 or 8. And I had been assigned a 100-word essay. I was very
Oh,
young, like first grade or something, but
somebody
I
did
went.
this before me.
Yeah. It was well, I think it was an essay. It was not a story. It was an essay, like, what did you
Okay.
do with your weekend? 100 words.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
I just knew that my life was over. I'd never be able to do it. And I think I sicked out that Friday. I remember this whole weekend. I was sick with dread on Saturday, all of Sunday, all the way up until Sunday night, when my mother finally made me get out the piece of paper and start writing. And I remember I wrote the first sentence and I was like, oh, that's 20 words. I'm almost done. Like I had no idea that 100 words was so manageable. In my head,
Yeah,
it just felt like so much. And I'm sure that there are brand new writers who think, 100 words, that's pretty hard. But when you sit down to do it, it's like a paragraph. It's a
that's what's so
beautiful
lovely
paragraph.
about it. Yeah, and you know what? There have been so many unexpected, like since we started 100 word story, and I just thought, oh, this will be for writers who want to publish their 100 word stories. But we found there are a lot of teachers who are teaching it in like GED classes and
Oh,
teaching it
cool.
to people who are just learning English. So it does have that accessibility to bring in people who might not think of themselves as writers and help them write a story.
That
Yeah,
gives
that's
me
been very,
goosebumps.
it's been very gratifying.
That
Yeah.
is so cool. You
Yeah.
should be so proud of yourself for all of this that you have been doing and have done. You really are. You should feel proud of yourself. I'm going to
Thank
Mr.
you. I'll
Rogers
try.
you.
I'll try to. I'll try to.
All right. If you were going to give you're full of craft tips. I know this. And again, I'm throwing this
Mhm.
out to you. I didn't give you any questions ahead because you answered the
Yeah.
normal questions last time. If you would, you've already shared quite a few craft tips, but would you like to share another craft tip of any sort with our listeners?
Any sort of craft tip. You know what? I'm gonna do something that's I'm gonna break the rules here a little bit.
Good.
Um, I've been talking to writers for most of my adult life in some form, right? And I've been giving kind of formal instruction for, I don't know, a long time too, and giving writing advice and revision advice. And in the end, I'm always just like, it's about your belief in yourself and your
Ah,
story. And if
yeah.
you've got to have that belief, and then everything comes from that, right? It's like you got to have that strong, solid foundation. And so I really think it's about nurturing your mindset in a variety of ways. And so that's easy to say, right? Believe in yourself. It's really tough to do. So I think you need to explore that and think
Mhm.
about ways what makes you believe in yourself. Like whether it's your community, whether it's being able to sit down every day and write those 500 words or those 100 words.
Mhm.
There's so much about like writing a good story that's about momentum. And I think like doing it like regularly and being in a community of writers as a sort of regular thing. I think that all builds your belief, I guess. Like honestly, like we should admit this. I'm not sure if this applies to you, Rachel. I'm sure you're over the top confident. Every word you
Uh,
write, you're like,
yeah.
that's beautiful.
Nope.
Well, because it's funny because like I think a lot of people think like once you've published or have a podcast or whatever that you've made it, that you never have these moments of losing faith in yourself or just not believing in yourself, and they happen all the time, right?
Yeah.
So it's a constant process, and that's part of the mindset, right? You got to like,
Yeah.
I love this quote actually, since we're talking about revision. I read this by George Saunders recently, and he was like, oh, he's like, when I hit the muddy middle, he's like, I've done that so many times in novels that now I say, oh, here I am in the muddy
Yes.
middle. This
Yes.
is just like what happens.
It just
And
kind of
like,
sucks.
kind of
It's just
sucks.
not fun, but I'm going to show up
But
and do the work anyway.
yeah, I've been here before.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, my craft tip is like really about a mindset. I think that's what most people need. I think sometimes like, even though I just wrote this book, I think those craft books they kind of promise the recipe of success, but I think the recipe for success is oftentimes not really in all your tools in the toolbox. It's really about your mindset.
I agree. And I think you said two really important things in there. You said a lot of important things, but two really jumped out at me, which were um, the community, which for me was one of the things that changed everything for me, was when I found writing friends that I could hang out with and we were speaking the same language and we were all failing similarly on a daily basis to meet
Mhm.
our own expectations of ourselves. And then you learn that writing is just about learning how to be okay with failing the expectations that you've set for yourself. And number two, just the sitting down and doing it and failing yourself over and over and being okay with it. This morning, when I was writing those 500 words, I wrote a couple sentences and I looked back at them and I lost faith in them. I lost faith in myself entirely. They were so bad that I didn't even delete. I just dropped two lines. And I knew later that future Rachel will just delete those happily, but I couldn't even bear to go through back and delete them. And I just started at a different place. I just left it like I didn't even finish the sentence. There's no period on it. I just lost faith and took a breath and, oh, there's the faith again. I'll write some more words. This happens every day. I let myself down. And every day it doesn't matter. I just keep writing.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter.
You're gonna be better off tomorrow with whatever you wrote today.
Exactly. And I'm going to be one tiny iota smarter about writing and work and life because I lived through today and did those sentences.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the questions that I have added that you have never answered on this show,
Okay.
what is the kindest thing that anyone has ever done for you as a writer?
Gosh. The opposite of that's so easy to answer.
Do you want to tell us about that? You don't have to name names.
Gosh, let me think. The kindest thing, that's such an interesting question. I've never really thought of that. I mean, there's so much kindness. Right now, I guess I'll just focus on what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Because to order somebody's book and then to take a photo of it and then put it online and offer words of encouragement, that's happened so many times today on this book launch, and from people I might barely know, and sometimes I'm not even sure if I don't know them, and that's just like so touching. And so I guess it's easy to have a negative view of humanity, and it's easy to be in a writing community sometimes and to feel a lot of envy, or that whatever, you're not getting the respect you deserve or not getting the stories published that you deserve. But there are actually a lot of like very, very, very positive people who are doing really nice things. And whether, it doesn't have to be buying your book or telling or promoting you on social media, but they are there, And so I think just having that like trust in humanity, that there are good people who want to write and read with you,
I love that. I've been experimenting with a woo-woo thing lately, but whenever I receive any form of money from my writing, like, the $3.20 royalty here and $17 there, I just
I get those royalty checks.
Oh Lord. Like I have gotten sub 40 cents royalties before, yeah, you understand. But instead of going, oh, what I'm doing is I'm taking a moment to like literally send like a pulse of thank you to that person who voted to spend their time or their dollars or their hard-earned energy to help an artist. Like, and I really love just every single day I go, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's so fun. It's so fun
What
to
a
do.
magical thing to have one person out there in the world. Yeah, just do what
Can you
say.
imagine? Like 15 years ago, I would have died to think of one person wanting to read anything that I'd ever written,
Yeah.
So
and like you say, that's a huge thing. They've spent the money for the book, and they've like the time, right?
They're giving time twice,
10 or 20
really,
hours.
when you think about it. They're spending the time that they had to spend to make the money to pay for the book, and then the time to read the book. That's a lot of time. I just blew my own mind. I don't think I've ever thought that. Okay, then the last question for you is, what's the kindest thing you've ever done for yourself as a writer?
That is a really good question. I'm going to go way back to when I was 20 years old and decided to be a writer. The short story was that I was deciding on a major in college, and I was choosing between an English major and an econ major. And I spent the semester abroad in France and fortunately sat around cafes and read novels. And it was clear to me that I was meant to be a writer and not an econ major. And the field of economics has been thanking me ever since. But the field of writing didn't exactly thank me in the beginning, but like I was so convinced of that I wanted to be a writer no matter what, and I was so stubborn to it that I never made writing a plan B. And so I heard all those people, telling me that it was going to be hard, that I wouldn't earn money, that all these people love telling you, they love discouraging you for some strange reason. But yeah, so I waited tables and I worked in bookstores, and I just always like writing was my joy. And I was thinking about this the other day because I'm doing my book event tomorrow with Lynn Mundell is interviewing me, and she actually was the reason I got this job. It was like the one big detour of my life when I started working for Charles Schwab in my early 30s, but I needed the money. So but in that first decade of writing, I mean, I got my MFA in there and I did have some encouragement, but no one was really encouraging me.
No,
I wasn't publishing widely. There was no reason to keep going in a lot of ways. And so I guess the kindest thing for me is that I made it a priority. I believed in it. I kept going. I don't know. I did the follow your bliss thing.
That, you know what, I'm sure that we have had over beer sometime this exact conversation that I don't remember it, which is one of the reasons I don't drink anymore. But
Yeah, neither of us
uh,
drink now. That's another kind thing
that's
I did to
right. That is a
myself.
very kind thing that we've done for ourselves. Although we did have some good drinks together, that was fun.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
our tracks are so similar, except that I spent 5 years miserable and almost failing out of college, trying to get a business degree. And then I remember the moment of clarity where I said to myself, oh, I'm just going to switch to English and I'm just going
Mm.
to be a writer. And then I was done in another, it took me 7 years to get my undergrad, but then only 2 years to get my master's. And I never made writing a plan B either. Like
Mhm.
911 was the way to pay the bills. I chose 911 because I wanted to steal the stories from 911, which I did. And it turned out to be well paying and a good job on the side. And I never let writing be the plan B. And I can't believe we have such
Yeah,
similar stories.
yeah, and
Yeah.
now we're gonna co-write Back Pocket of Time.
The back pocket of time. I'm all about it. I'm all about it. All right. Will you please tell everyone where you can be found on the internet?
Oh, okay. Everywhere my name is Grant Faulkner, spelled with a U, like William Faulkner, although he added the U to his name just so everybody knows.
Is there,
Um,
do some people say just FALK?
yeah, some people
Oh,
do
interesting. Okay.
Falkner, and he was born Falkner, but I'm
Ah, you
Faulkner.
were
So yeah,
born legit.
grantfaulkner.com, and I'm at Grant Faulkner on like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Those are my main three things. But yeah, I love when people follow me and we keep the conversation about writing going.
It's a
So please
joy to
do.
talk to you. The book is The Art of Brevity. Please go grab it from my friend Grant. Such a treat to talk to you. Thank you. And may it fly from the shelves.
Thank you, Rachel. It's always a treat to talk with you. So thank you so much.